biologist here at the Red Cliffs Desert Reserve. We are the Washington County Habitat Conservation Plan, and so we help manage the reserve as a part of our permit. I got my degree at BYU as well, and then I did a master's degree at Humboldt State in California. And wildlife management and biology is kind of where my area of expertise is. One is the habitat destruction or habitat loss, and that comes from urbanization, comes from fires, a variety of different ways that they lose their habitat. Another way is through predation. We've got subsidized predators. We've got coyotes and ravens, which exist in much higher numbers now than they ever did historically. We've got other threats such as the disease, upper respiratory tract disease, that has spread through a lot of populations. Then you've also got the threat of, I forgot what it was, probably just illegal collecting. People know they shouldn't have desert tortoises, yet they still do. They still pick them up, they still take them home. So that's still another threat, probably one of the smaller ones. And then just other ones associated with humans, such as dogs, incidental problems like that, hit by cars or things like that. Research into the desert tortoise began probably in the 70s, 80s, and then it started to get a lot of recognition as this species probably needs some help, or it could become an endangered or threatened species. And so it became officially listed in 1990 as a threatened species on the endangered species list, according to all of the research that they had accumulated in the years previous. In the reserve, we do monitoring every other year with the Division of Wildlife, and their most recent estimate puts it at about 2,000 desert tortoises inside the reserve. The most common habitat to find desert tortoises, at least here in Utah, is usually below 4,000 feet in elevation. Oftentimes they're associated with desert washes. That's kind of their most favorite habitat here, just because it provides a lot more food for them, higher moisture content as well, and then there's a lot of areas where they can dig and have shelters and burrows as well. The biggest change in the environment here in Red Cliffs Desert Reserve and throughout a lot of the range of the desert tortoise is with invasive annual plants like the cheatgrass and the bromus that we have out there. It's an invasive annual, and it spreads all throughout the entire landscape. It creates a really thick carpet of vegetation that burns very easily, and it burns hotter and more intense than historically it ever did. So that's one of the biggest threats we have, is the fire threat because of these invasive grasses.
Well, you fell on the concrete and nearly broke your ass, and you were bleeding all over the place, and I rushed you off to the hospital.
Tortoises are becoming endangered, and one of the main factors leading to this is the effects of humans. With tourism comes people, and people build roads and cities. Roads are like runways for tortoises to get hit by cars. The humans then produce waste, which has to go somewhere, and many times this waste ends up blowing through the desert. The tortoises then try to eat this garbage, and their bodies cannot digest it, therefore they die. This is one of the leading causes of desert tortoise deaths. All the other trash the humans have go into landfills, and the landfills attract ravens. A raven's staple food is hatchling tortoises. Tortoises are also being killed as an indirect consequence of humans releasing tortoises into the wild to try to replenish the species. When raised in captivity, many tortoises contract a respiratory tract disease, and then when released into the wild, they transmit the disease to the other tortoises.
Fortunately, there's not a ton of things that we can do to really improve or maintain their populations. There's been some discussion about head starting, where you raise little baby desert tortoises, give them a head start, and then release them when they're a few years older so that they don't have some of the risks of predation that they would as youngsters. We don't currently do that here, but in other parts of the range they're starting to do some of that. We do install a lot of fencing to keep tortoises off roads, keep them where we want them. There's not a whole lot else we can do. Control fire the best we can, but it seems to be a losing effort at this point. We need a little bit more research in what we can do to control a lot of those invasive annual grasses that we have and reduce the threat of fire. But we're doing the best we can just to maintain the reserve and boost it by finding tortoises outside of the reserve that are in developing areas, and we try to put them inside the reserve. But unfortunately, there's not a lot more we can do to improve them.
On the cover of this strange bed, spin me around just to pin me down.
Tortoises are very long-lived animals. They have a reproductive cycle that's similar to humans. They don't reach sexual maturity until they're about 20 years old, or actually not 20 years, about 12 to 20 years old is when they start making babies most often. And they can live up to almost 100 years old. So when you take that in mind, it means that the recovery of the desert tortoise is a long-term project. It's not something that can happen immediately. So the way I see it, recovery is going to have to be really slow and progressive before it can ever become delisted and get off the endangered species list. But that's the goal, and that's what we're shooting for, but it's still many years out in the future.
Spin me around just to pin me down on the cover of this strange bed. Spin me around just to pin me down. Spin me around just to pin me down. I'll be gone by the night's end. Spin me around just to pin me down. I'll be home in a little while. Lover, I'll be home.